Hi there, good morning, everyone. Oh, we can do better than that. Good morning. There you go. My cup of coffee and chocolate chip muffin have kicked in this morning. How about you? Anyhow, my name's Rita Doerr. I work at NSA's cybersecurity group, and I'm here to talk to you about the Codebreaker Challenge, presenting a little story about the Codebreaker Challenge. But first, a little bit about myself. I'm born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, East Coast of the United States, and I am a sports junkie enthusiast. In particular, I love the Baltimore Orioles and the Baltimore Ravens. I am a lover of education. I am a graduate of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Go Retrievers. I know Sarah here is a Retriever, yeah. I have a master's in applied math and a PhD in computer science. Time permitting, I'm adjunct professor in the computer science and engineering department. I love outdoors. I love to garden. I love to toodle, which at my age is the equivalent of going out for a 5K or a 10K. Haven't done a marathon yet. When done, love to hit my hot tub. I love working at NSA. I've done so for 3.9 decades. You did the math, right? I started right after middle school. I have passed on my love of sports, chocolate, chocoholic, and education, more importantly, to my two adult daughters, Steffi and Jackie. Steffi's here with me this morning. I'd like to dedicate this talk to Tom Doerr. All right, so I have disclosed that I'm from NSA, and I have an advanced degree in math. So I thought I'd start off this morning, put your thinking caps on, with a numerical series. You will see this series later on in the talk, I promise. It is not, hint, not a Fibonacci sequence. It is not a geometric series. And it is not a hypergeometric series. But there is a pattern, maybe two, in there. Right. A couple takeaways from my talk. Okay, I did tell you I have an advanced degree in math. So there's another partial series. Another impact that I'm going to foot stomp about is that the Codebreaker Challenge has definitely influenced post-secondary education, at least within the United States. And then, oh my gosh, had we thought of the number of folks who would be applying to and having jobs offered by the National Security Agency. All right, so how did we get started? Folks like myself, academic liaisons at NSA, we are folks who were associated with colleges and universities across the United States who go there regularly throughout the academic year to attend career fairs, tech talks, hiring events, and the like. We would come back from our respective trips around the United States, and we would have this resounding note about, you know, people keep asking us, what exactly does NSA do? And short of saying, well, I'd have to shoot you if I tell you, we decided that we needed some unclassified way to explain what our NSA cyber analysts do from a mission perspective on a daily basis, right? So the whole notion of a Codebreaker Challenge was born. So what is it? It is our annual cryptanalytic and cyber competition, which not only focuses on our academic outreach aspect from NSA, but also a hiring and recruiting tool. But it was intended, and I took a quote out of one of the proposals, as a way to give university students, and I underlined that and put that in bold letters, university students, a way to become exposed in an unclassified manner to some of the classified technical challenges and issues and problems that NSA analysts deal with on a daily basis. Why? Well, we've gone from being the no such agency over many, many years to the National Security Agency, and we wanted to make sure that our mission was out there and known in an unclassified manner. And we wanted this challenge to be able to have folks showcase their current skills in cyber and computer science, and or be able to learn and grasp new skills, new challenges. So in that way, from a cybersecurity education perspective, it is an experiential learning tool, which is something that I really cherish. But ultimately, though, it is a way that we can identify some of the top talent in the cyber and cryptanalytic fields. And I give a teaser to impact number 3. So who's involved in the Codebreaker Challenge? Well, schools from across the US and territories are able to register for the Codebreaker Challenge with their school email address, okay? Who else is involved in the challenge? Well, NSA employees. There's about a dozen or so, and they work volunteer on an annual basis to be able to kind of brainstorm for a few days, kind of design for a few weeks, but then the majority of the time is spent in the development and the deployment of this particular challenge. I'm reminded that this is an individual challenge of different school participants, all right? I say that, oh, next slide. So when is it? So it's usually launched in a fall semester in accordance with an academic year. It runs throughout that fall semester, and then the remainder of the year is spent in kind of sitting back, taking a hot wash, looking at how to improve it going on, and then coming up with a new scenario, brainstorming, designing, developing, deploying, rinse, review. Right? So how is the challenge structured? So it's more of a divide and conquer approach from a larger challenge in the sense that it's broken up into a series of tasks, right? Each task is successively harder, and one task may give you a hint or insight for information that you may need to use in the next task, right? Each student who registers is given certain points for each of the tasks that they are able to accomplish. Then an overall school's performance is taken with all of the student participants from that school, and all of their scores are aggregated together. I will also note in the past couple years that we have encouraged alumni and faculty to participate in the Codebreaker Challenge, and you'll kind of see why, especially from a faculty perspective, a little later on. All right, so as promised, that very first sequence pattern is revealed, highlighted in the red box. Wasn't Fibonacci, wasn't hypergeometric, it represents the total number of schools that have participated in the Codebreaker Challenge since its inception in 2013. All right, before getting into the pattern aspect, there's some blank elements in my table, my matrix. As a mathematician, that kind of bothers me. So when the challenge first began in 2013, folks were more concerned about getting it designed, getting it up and running, whatever. There was no way, absolutely no way, they thought about, oh my gosh, 10 years from now, we're going to need to do some sort of like statistical analysis of the people who have participated in the challenge from the beginning. So I really believe that statistics were not intentionally, but were to some extent slightly overlooked. So that's why if you see any blank cells for 2013-24, that's the reason. Okay, back to our pattern. I like patterns. I work at NSA. All right. So you can see from 2013 to 2017, we have a steady growth. One could argue almost an exponential growth, right? And then between 2017 and 2022, we have what I'm calling a high-low pattern. If that pattern continues to exist, the Codebreaker Challenge for 2023 should actually be one of those high years from a number of schools that are participating, right? So what can we say about this high-low pattern? Well, in speaking with some of my colleagues, we interpret that as sometimes maybe a school's group of students who have participated in the Codebreaker Challenge over a period of time have graduated, right? So certain numbers have decreased, and it takes a little while before they kind of build up that technical savviness again. All right. I thought it would be interesting, since this is a historical talk in nature, to go through some of the scenarios that have been presented, offered over the years of the Codebreaker Challenge. The very first year, 2013, students, when registered, were emailed a unique binary, and they had to reverse engineer that binary using a combination of an AES key, SHA-256 hash, in order to be able to find out what the password was in order to run the program. I actually attempted my hand at this, got a little frustrated, put the binary in Fred, found a little couple words here, and I said, I think I found it. 2014 and 2015, we had scenarios that dealt with international terrorist organizations who were using some revised operational security procedures in communicating with their operatives in the field when trying to encrypt certain messages. 2016, terrorists were now developing a new improvised explosive device, making it harder for the US military to detect and prevent outside attacks. 2017, one of our federal agencies, the Department of Homeland Security, requested NSA's assistance because they were investigating a potential intrusion into a critical US infrastructure. 2018 was the first year that there was a ransomware scenario. I'm going to pause here to reflect that even though that these are fictitious, unclassified scenarios, right, it's interesting that there exists a correlation to real-world events. Right. So in 2018, ransomware managed to get into some sort of critical government system. NSA was contacted to help in remediating the infection to prevent any major data loss. My favorite scenario, as an Android user, a new app was developed called Terror Time. So participants needed to be able to reverse engineer and develop some new exploitation techniques for this secure messaging app. 2020, a US citizen who went abroad on a mission went missing. And NSA was called in to help, and the only type of information available was some local street surveillance camera footage showing that that American's cell phone was being destroyed. 2021, NSA was investigating a particular foreign cyber actor. There was some traffic that was captured, network traffic captured going to a particular IP address, right? And NSA believed that that traffic, that information, was going to the actor's listening post. So, as an aside, a listening post in this sense is a C2 command and control server that sits specifically in between the attacker server, and the victim's infected machines. Before getting into last year's scenario in a little bit more detail, I wanted to provide you over the years, again, apologies for the blank lines in 2013 and 2014, the number of schools, the number of solvers per school, highest ranking in the past 8-9 years. It's interesting to note that when I gave a version of this talk last year at the NICE conference in Atlanta, Georgia, this slide was very well received. I didn't even think of that. Yes, all of you out there from Georgia, right? In 2020, pandemic year, there was additional time given to students, participants, to be able to finish the challenge, realizing that they may not have had all of their focus on the Codebreaker challenge that year. Other things in life going on. All right, last year's challenge. We're back to ransomware. Particular company's network was infected. They contacted the FBI, who in turn contacted NSA. You see a lot of other companies, federal agencies, being contacted, then contacting NSA. So the mission for this particular scenario was as follows. Participants needed to find, first of all, the attacker's identity, right? Then they needed to identify the tools that attacker was using in their particular nefarious act. And last year, they had to investigate a ransomware as a service website. So they had to find and exploit the vulnerabilities in the victim's file. So I told you before that the Codebreaker challenge is broken into different tasks, right? So some of the tasks for last year were as follows. The first thing that participants needed to do was to investigate the victim's network. And they did that by using some log analysis to figure out exactly which account had been compromised. Then, using a combination of network and file forensics, they needed to actually recover the attacker's tools and discover the identity. These first two tasks were more background in nature, just to get everyone up to speed on the given challenge at hand. The next two tasks dealt with the specific ransomware site, and this time they had to use some web reverse engineering to identify the website itself, and then do a little bit more analysis and exploitation of that website in order to find out more information. All right. Tasks 5 and 6 are getting more into the meat of the challenge for last year. They had to gain access to this ransomware as a service site, right? So now they're using some reverse engineering and some cryptanalytic skills to be able to recover the attacker's computer. Then once having done so, they want to access, using some web hacking, the ransomware as a service site as the attacker themselves. All right. But ultimately, the challenge comes down to tasks 7, 8, and 9, where you want to recover the victim's keys. So you're going to need to escalate yourself as privileges on the admin account, find the encrypting key that was used to protect the victim's files by doing some web hacking and, again, some more reverse engineering, and then ultimately recovering the victim's keys using some software development and cryptanalysis. And recall that at each one of the tasks along the line, participants who successfully accomplish each of the tasks are given points. And then the points are accrued overall for a student, as a solver, as well as an overall school contribution. All right, so for last year, some of the particular skills that were learned are what you see in front of you. And I had highlighted them throughout each of the tasks. But I want to pause here a second to note that if you go, when you go, to the Codebreaker Challenge website, there's a resource tab up top, and it will take you to any number of technical resources, PowerPoint slides, videos, anything about Python programming, assembly, disassembling, and this thing called Ghidra. Ghidra is NSA's software reverse engineering tool, and it was first introduced at the 2019 RSA conference by then my boss, Rob Joyce. So whenever there is some reverse engineering aspect of the challenge, we encourage students to use Ghidra to become familiar with it. Okay, the second series that I alluded to before is now revealed. This reflects the number of high school participants that have participated in the Codebreaker Challenge since at least 2015. High school students, right? Recall that this challenge was specifically designed to enlighten college and university students about the mission, cryptanalytic and cyber mission of NSA. Now we have high school students and quite possibly even middle school students participating. This is phenomenal. How is this happening? Well, being in cyber education, I realize that over the past 5 to 10 years, high school students, my youngest included, were required to take a computer science or a cyber or even a networking course required before their sophomore, junior year in high school. So high school students are becoming more tech savvy, which is wonderful. I also want to mention that in 2021, a high school student actually solved the Codebreaker Challenge. That person was one of 38 people overall to have completed the challenge. All right, so another impact of the Codebreaker Challenge has been how colleges and universities have used not only the technical resources that are available within the challenge, but the challenge itself. Many of the schools use those technical resources that are on that resources tab as part of their curriculum within their cyber and computer science curriculum. Other schools are saying, hey, this is a difficult challenge. If you can solve this challenge, I will give you an A in the class, and you don't have to take the final. Woohoo, right? And other schools are suggesting that those lessons learned and those skills that NSA is trying to hone in on, schools are making sure that they have requisite computer science and cyber courses that cover those skills. If not, they are creating special courses in those topic areas. I am reminded by one of my colleagues that schools that perform well in the Codebreaker Challenge have not only used the technical resources that are available, have had their cyber club participate in the challenge, but have also had their faculty participate so that the faculty can gain an appreciation for the technical rigor that's involved within the challenge. Right, so the so what factor, from at least an NSA hiring and recruiting perspective, it's just the sheer volume of students who have applied to NSA over the years. These numbers that you see in front of you represent lower bounds because the only way that NSA can track someone who had participated in the Codebreaker Challenge and someone who has applied to NSA is if and only if they use the same email address, right? We need a better way of tracking these things. So these are lower bounds by all respects. All right, so, first announced at Black Hat USA 2023, Codebreaker Challenge 2023. This year, we're having a scenario that focuses around the US Coast Guard identifying some signal about 30 miles off the outside the continental US, and NSA has been asked to interpret and find the origin of said signal. Again, there's going to be 9 tasks. And the time frame for this year's challenge is a little shifted. It's going to actually launch on September 28th, and it will end probably around midnight Eastern Daylight Time on December the 21st. I'm also reminded that Codebreaker Challenge is not a race, right? There are students who, at the stroke of September 28th, are going to be there registering and having fun. Some finish within a week. Some may take the rest of the time frame. Others, who may not have heard about the Codebreaker Challenge, find out about it within the last couple weeks, start the challenge, and finish it. The website, nsa-codebreaker.org, should be up and running. Probably if you go to it now, it will probably reflect 2022's information. I have flyers with me that I can hand out after this talk, or I encourage everyone to go to the NSA Cybersecurity Collaboration booth, booth number 1180, where there are more flyers, and more information about the overall mission and kind of hints to the different tasks within the challenge. And for any updates on this particular challenge, please check out NSA's presence on social media. We've come a long way since I first started at the agency. We are smattered all over Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. All right, so the Codebreaker Challenge is no longer a way of instructing college and university students about what NSA does. There are high school students, and as sure as I'm standing here, probably some really, really, really tech-savvy middle school students who are participating. We are driving, the Codebreaker Challenge is driving cybersecurity and computer science curriculum, which makes my heart happy. And NSA is hiring. Whether or not you've participated in, completed the Codebreaker Challenge, we are hiring. In fact, this year, we have a goal of the largest goal in over, I think, the past decade of wanting to hire 3,000 folks. All right. So, before concluding, I just wanted to say that NSA has always had, especially after 9/11, a saying: one team, one mission. The Codebreaker Challenge would not be possible if not for the diligent efforts, persistent efforts of a lot of my colleagues. I am just merely a spokesperson up here. But I wanted to acknowledge several people. I'd like to acknowledge Nick, who has helped me with slides and IT support, Bo, who made this laptop available. Aaron and Ben have been Codebreaker Challenge tech leaders over the past couple years. Eric has been part of the gang that developed the Codebreaker Challenge idea way back when. Michelle has been extremely helpful with providing me a lot of the statistical information. And the Rita, don't forget to mention this. I'm going to call out 2 people. One, Dr. Pamela O'Shea, sitting here in the front row. Black Hat has this Speakers Coaches program. And I thought, what the hey? So I got associated with Pamela, and she was phenomenal. The hardest thing we had to figure out was the 14 hours time difference between Baltimore, Maryland, and Melbourne, Australia. But once we did that, we were good. Anyhow, Pamela, thank you so much. But last, certainly not least, I want to call out Josiah D., Dr. Josiah Dykstra, who was my office mate last year when the call for Black Hat abstracts and talks came out. Josiah is a former Black Hat speaker and said, Rita, you'll do fine in all the craziness. So I texted him yesterday, and I said, Josiah, what did you get me into? Anyhow, Josiah, wherever you are right now, thank you so much. And I want to thank you for your time. I have around 9 minutes, so if anyone has any questions, I understand there's some microphones around. I don't know who stood up first.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Zhang Ling. I take the first one, the Codebreaker challenge in 2013. So it's the first one.
Wasn't that fun?
Yeah, I think so. But it's not very official. So it's like the professor forwarded the challenge to me, and I take 2 days to solve it. I think it's very inspired me to keep learning. I think it's very good. My question is, do you have plan to open the Codebreaker challenge to public? So I know that currently it's only available for students, but do you have plan to make it open for public?
As I noted, so thank you for your question, and I will rephrase. The question is, will we open up the Codebreaker challenge to the public? So realizing the focus of the challenge was for college and universities, was for student population. We wanted to focus all our energies on that. I am told, this is not the first time this question's been asked, that there are other thoughts and activities underway to make the essence of the Codebreaker challenge more public in nature. Thank you for your question. I'm going to go over
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was just curious. I know you said that the scenarios are correlated to real life examples, and I know you can't get into those, but in the completions of the scenarios, is that information and the work being done actually used to help solve the real world issues, or are those things that have been solved and now are being used as examples to help train the next generation?
No, that's a good question. So to rephrase, are the learning aspects of solving the challenge used from an agency's perspective to help solve problems of that nature? Is that, yeah. So there are a lot of smart people who participate in the design of this, and they may well have themselves partaken in agency-related technical challenges of that nature. So they're using some of that knowledge, perhaps, in an unclassified way to make sure that the essence of what they had to solve from a technical perspective is reflected in one or more tasks of the challenge.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, when you are designing and building these challenges, are you building them as strongly as you can, or are there anticipated weaknesses you expect the students to be able to take advantage of, particularly like in the earlier tasks?
That's a good question. So I'm going to rephrase that is, do we kind of ramp up the challenge, the complexity of the task? And that is true. We want to have people hooked. We want to have participants hooked on the challenge. So we're not going to give them a, I don't know, doubly enciphered whatever on task number 1. The 4 tasks that I showed from last year's challenge, we kind of got things warmed up, if you will, so that they could find out more about the victim, we could find out more about the ransomware as a service website, and then gradually get into the tasks. Yeah, thank you for your question. Let me go over here.
Thank you. I actually have 2 questions. One is I participated in the coin challenge of the Australian Signals Directorate last year, and they do it quite differently than you do, and I wonder what's your opinion on that. And the second thing is, from all I heard about the NSA, Are you sure you cannot match people who use 2 different email addresses?
I'll address the first question. The coin challenge, I'm not 100% aware of that, so I don't want to misspeak here. But I know that we have a variety of folks, academic folks at the agency that help design CTFs around the US from an academic perspective. So I think that's more in line with that coin challenge. And for your second question, I can neither confirm nor deny. Right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi
there.
Hi, thank you. I was curious about how you during the design phase, how you sort of gauge complexity and whether or not you, as you're going through a number of iterations, if you have some sort of internal testing team or competition where you're like posing it to your own staff.
That's an excellent question. Let me rephrase that. Given the complexity of the technical challenges, do we kind of test it internally? And the answer is yes. Before it's actually deployed, they make the challenge available to people inside the agency who have time, which is where I got to participate early on as a litmus test, if you will. That was point one. Second point, I think sometimes they look at the number of solvers, overall solvers from year to year, and use that as a potential litmus test to say, oh my gosh, we only had a handful of people who solved it last year. That may mean that it's really hard. So we may want to dial it back a little bit. But at the same time, we want to make sure that it is as accurate and sophisticated from a technical complexity perspective as possible. Yeah, thank you for your question. All right, anyone else over here? It's hard to see with these lights up here.
Hello.
Hi there.
Thank you for the talk. I noticed in 2022, you guys built the Codebreaker Challenge to have kind of a plethora of skills and I guess learning objectives. Do you ever lean more heavily into web hacking or cryptography or one or another based on what you're seeing in the landscape?
That's a good question, and I think everyone heard that. So cryptography, cryptology is NSA's bread and butter. So challenge isn't going to be designed without something like that in mind. Regarding what we see in the cyber landscape, yeah, we're gonna note that, cloud architecture now has extended into the ransomware as a service, cybersecurity as a service, something else as a service. So we want to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, and make sure that we have those features available within the challenge itself. Yeah. So, and we want to keep it fresh. We want to keep it new, right? But you're going to see software reverse engineering, software development, and cryptography, cryptanalytic skills, definitely as part of it. Yes, sir.
Some of the scenarios you discussed interagency operations. Are there components of the challenge that aren't necessarily technical, but might be more on social engineering and human intelligence and things like to foster those sorts of skills? Because, we got to be human, right?
At the end of the day, thank you for your question. So, as far as I know, the only interagency activity is in the fictitious scenario of DHS contacting NSA, FBI contacting NSA, just to kind of lay the groundwork for kind of the involvement from a federal agency perspective. I do not believe that any of the tasks per se involved any social engineering or anything to that effect. Yeah, but that's a good question. That's a good question. Maybe we should. Who knows? All right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you for the speech. That was really interesting.
Thank you.
My question is, do you see other countries doing similar things? And how do we compare or how do we stack up against the ones that might be doing something similar?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I do a little bit of work with the Office of the National Cyber Director, and one of the challenges, one of the efforts that they kicked off this past April was a quad challenge. And I'm going to misspeak here. It was the United States, Israel, Japan, and another country that was involved in a kind of cyber safety 101 type challenge. And it ran, I think, through the better part of April. So yeah, there are other countries that are involved with activities of this nature, maybe not as rigorous as the Codebreaker challenge. I'm a little bit biased. A good question. I see I'm 0 here on time. I want to be mindful of the next speaker. Thank you all for your time again. I'll be available. Thank you.